Welcome to our Christmas Day deep dive. I think it'd be fun to unwrap some of the history behind our favorite Christmas traditions.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Whether our listeners are big holiday history buffs or just kind of curious about where these traditions come from, I
Yeah.
think we can all enjoy unpacking it all together.
Right, exactly. So maybe we should
Okay.
start with the date itself, December 25th. It just seems like such a given, but how did this date become the Christmas date?
Well, the truth is the actual date of Jesus's birth is unknown.
Mm-hmm.
There were some early theories that Christians calculated it based on the assumed date of his death.
Ah,
But the connection to pre-existing pagan celebrations that already happened around December 25th,
oh, okay.
that's a lot more, I think, compelling.
So the church kind of co-opted those celebrations. What were those like? I'm really curious.
Okay, so imagine ancient Rome. So they had Saturnalia, which was this week-long festival,
Oh.
and everything would just stop. Work stopped, people exchanged gifts, and social norms were, well, a little more relaxed.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. It was basically just like a time of revelry, marking the end of the darkest part of the year.
So I can see why aligning Christmas with this might have made it a bit easier for people to transition,
Exactly. That was really smart.
Yeah.
And then there was also the celebration of Sol Invictus.
Oh, who's that?
So Sol Invictus was the unconquered sun god.
Ah,
And so the winter solstice, which is the shortest day of the year,
right.
it marked the symbolic rebirth of the sun, the return of light,
Makes sense.
which was a really powerful concept for a lot of different cultures back then.
So by choosing December 25th, the church was kind of cleverly blending this,
Yeah.
the Christian message, with existing traditions that people already knew and were already doing
Yeah.
to create a sense of continuity and familiarity.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, that's really interesting.
It's a really fascinating example of how cultural practices can evolve and adapt.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, let's fast forward a few centuries. Let's go to the Middle Ages. So what new elements were kind of added to the Christmas story during that period?
Well, the Middle Ages saw the rise of some pretty key traditions.
Okay.
So first we have Advent. Advent is, that period of reflection and preparation before Christmas.
Right.
That became much more widespread then.
Hmm.
And that's something that, a lot of people still observe today.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And did the way that people celebrate Christmas Eve, did that evolve as well during that time?
Oh, absolutely. Midnight Mass on Christmas Eve,
Right.
which is also known as Misa del Gallo,
Misa del Gallo, okay.
or, Rooster's Mass, gained a lot of popularity during this time.
Oh, wow. Okay, Rooster's Mass, is there a story behind that name?
Well, there is this legend that suggests that a rooster was the first to announce the birth of Jesus.
Okay.
So it kind of adds a little touch of folklore to the celebration.
No, that's interesting. And what about nativity scenes? Those were kind of starting to take shape around that time too, right?
Oh, you're right. We can actually trace nativity scenes back to the Middle Ages.
Okay.
So early Christians, they would just use a manger as a symbolic reminder of Jesus's birth.
Right.
But by the 10th century, churches were staging these really elaborate theatrical performances of the nativity.
Oh, wow. So they were bringing the story to life.
Literally, yeah.
Oh.
However, these performances, they sometimes became a bit too lively.
How so?
There was excess revelry and sometimes even mockery,
Well,
which didn't go over so well. And in 1207,
Okay.
Pope Innocent III actually had to intervene,
Wow.
and he banned them from churches.
I can only imagine how things might have gotten out of hand. But how did nativity scenes then make a comeback if they were banned?
Well, St. Francis of Assisi is actually credited with creating the first live nativity scene in 1223. So he incorporated real animals and people into it,
Oh, wow.
bringing this new level of realism and emotional resonance to the depiction.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is where the tradition of actually setting up nativity scenes in, first in churches and then later in homes really gained momentum.
Precisely.
Okay, that's fascinating. It's really interesting how a tradition that was initially banned
Right.
was later revived and then embraced in this new form.
Right, exactly.
Okay, well, speaking of captivating figures,
Yeah.
let's talk about the three kings.
Yeah.
I mean, their story's so familiar,
Yeah.
but their background is kind of shrouded in mystery.
It really is.
What can you tell us about them?
Well, the details about the three kings are really fascinating, I think, because they
Okay.
kind of reveal a lot about how the interpretations have changed throughout time,
Yeah.
you know? So most of what we know about them comes from the Gospel of Matthew. But even that's actually pretty sparse. Like their number and even their names weren't actually established until much later.
Really?
And some people think that this was potentially to like shift their image away from an initial association with magic and the occult.
Why would that be a problem?
Well, as Christianity was, trying to establish itself as a religion,
Right.
distinguishing its beliefs from practices associated with magic and things like that
Okay.
became like really crucial.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So how did they go from, like, these figures that were associated with magic to, like, revered biblical kings?
Well, a 6th century Armenian text,
Okay.
that was the first to actually mention the names that we know today. Melchior, Gaspar, and Balthazar.
Okay.
And then there's this mosaic from the same era. It was found in Ravenna, Italy.
Okay.
And it really solidifies like their prominence. It depicts them with their like now iconic gifts and dressed in like Persian attire.
And what about their gifts? Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Those seem so specific. Do they have, like, a symbolic meaning?
Oh, absolutely. The significance of their ages and their gifts
Okay.
were actually elaborated on further by the monk Bede in the 8th century.
Mm.
So he assigned them ages, like how old they were, and continents, and really gave their gifts this symbolic weight.
Oh, interesting. So it wasn't just random treasures.
Not at all.
Yeah.
So, for example, Melchior, the oldest, represents Europe,
Okay.
and he offers gold, which, acknowledges Jesus as king.
Right.
Then there's Gaspar. He's the middle-aged one.
Okay.
He represents Asia and offers frankincense, which recognizes Jesus as God.
Okay.
And then we have Balthazar, the youngest, represents Africa
Mhm.
and offers myrrh, which actually foreshadows Jesus's death and sacrifice.
Oh, wow. I never realized that. That's so interesting.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah. So their gifts weren't just like random treasures. They really represented like different aspects of Jesus's identity and destiny.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And then, by the 15th century,
Okay.
the kings even came to represent the 3 known races of the time,
Oh, wow.
which, kind of reinforced this idea that Christianity's message was universal.
That's so interesting how these figures continue to like evolve and take on new layers of meaning
Right.
over time.
It really is. And then speaking of journeys, their relics
Yeah.
are believed to be in Cologne, Germany. They were moved from Milan in the 12th century.
Wow.
So their stories, like, still resonating,
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing how these figures, whose details are like relatively scarce in the Bible,
Right.
have captured people's imagination.
For centuries.
Yeah, for centuries.
And their story also highlights how traditions can be shaped and reshaped
Yeah.
to fit the beliefs and values of different times and different cultures.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Well, now let's shift our focus to another gift giver. St. Nicholas is often considered like the precursor to Santa Claus.
Right.
What's his story?
Well, St. Nicholas was a 4th century bishop
Okay.
from Myra in modern-day Turkey, and he was really known for his generosity, particularly toward children, and this is probably why we associate him with, gift-giving today.
So he had a reputation for giving gifts even back then.
The tradition of giving gifts on his feast day, which is December 6th,
Okay.
might actually come from this alleged practice of him giving toys to children every Christmas Eve.
Ah, so that makes sense. But I'm guessing that the full Santa Claus evolution is a story for another time.
Yeah, that's a whole other story. We could dedicate an entire deep dive to that for sure.
Yeah. Okay, well, for now, let's maybe move on to another essential part of Christmas, the food. It seems like even our Christmas feasts have roots that go way back.
Oh, yeah, they really do.
So what can you tell us about that?
Well, think back to those Roman Saturnalia celebrations. Feasting was like a central part of the festivities,
Okay.
and some believe that this actually influenced the development of Christmas dinners.
So our Christmas meals are like a continuation of those ancient traditions in a way.
Exactly. Of course, a medieval Christmas dinner
Well,
would look very different
yeah.
from what we're used to today.
Sure.
Imagine a table, laden with like all these regional specialties,
Right.
showcasing the bounty of, the local harvests.
So while the tradition of feasting has remained like pretty consistent, the menu itself has changed a lot over time.
Oh, for sure.
Were there any specific types of dishes that were common during those early Christmas feasts?
Well, the tradition of having a central bird dish, whether it was goose or capon or turkey,
Right.
that actually has really deep roots.
Okay.
It possibly symbolized the return of spring and fertility.
Ah, so it's not just about deliciousness.
Mhm.
It's also about symbolism and connecting to the cycle of seasons.
It's everything.
What about some of the Christmas treats we enjoy today? Do they have equally interesting backstories?
Oh, you bet they do. So marzipan, which is, that sweet almond paste,
Yes.
actually has a pretty fascinating origin story. So it may have actually emerged in Toledo, Spain,
Okay.
during a siege in 1214. So they were facing food shortages,
Oh, wow.
and these resourceful nuns, they used almonds and sugar to create this paste that could feed the city's defenders.
Wow. So necessity really is the mother of invention, and in this case, a delicious one.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
And what about Turon?
Turon. Yeah.
That really delightful nougat confection. It likely has Arabic origins, actually.
Oh, wow.
Descriptions of similar treats appear in 1001 Nights.
Wow. So it's a treat with a really global heritage.
Exactly. It's amazing how these treats that we often see as just simple indulgences
Right.
actually carry such rich historical and cultural significance.
I know. It's really fascinating.
And how about roscon de reyes,
Roscoe de Reyes. Okay.
which is the king's cake? This is a Spanish treat,
Okay.
a ring-shaped cake that's eaten on Epiphany.
Okay.
It might actually have a connection to Roman Saturnalia.
Oh.
Remember that cake with the hidden bean we talked about?
Yes.
So whoever found that bean became the king of the celebration.
Oh, wow. So a tradition from Roman times might actually still be playing out on our tables today.
Isn't that incredible?
It really is. It's just incredible how deeply intertwined these threads of history are.
Absolutely. And we've only just begun to really explore the vast tapestry of Christmas traditions,
Oh, wait, no.
From New Year's Eve to Christmas trees and carols, there's just so much more to discover.
Yeah, it seems like every corner of Christmas has, a story to tell,
Yeah.
revealing, layers of history and culture and symbolism.
It really does. And by delving into these stories, we can gain this much deeper appreciation
Yeah.
for the richness and complexity of this holiday.
Okay, well, we've certainly covered a lot of ground already, but there's still so much more to explore. We'll be back soon to delve into even more festive traditions in part 2 of our Christmas deep dive. Welcome back to our Christmas Day deep dive. I feel like we've already unraveled some pretty fascinating origins of Christmas traditions.
I know, right?
But we're not done yet. There's still a whole sleigh full of history to uncover.
There really is. We've only just, scratched the surface.
Yeah.
There's so many more threads to follow, from ancient customs to, more modern celebrations.
Okay, well, let's jump right in. I'm curious about New Year's Eve. Is that another celebration that has ancient roots?
Oh, absolutely. You can actually trace the celebration of New Year's Eve all the way back to the Roman Empire
Oh, wow.
and the introduction of the Julian calendar by, Julius Caesar
Right.
in 45 BC.
Ah, Julius Caesar always leaving his mark on history. But why New Year's Eve? Was there something special about that time of year for the Romans?
Well, January was actually named after Janus, who was the Roman god of beginnings and transitions.
Oh.
And he's often depicted with two faces, one looking back at the past and the other looking forward to the future.
So it was a fitting time to reflect on the year gone by and embrace new beginnings.
Yeah.
Just as we do today.
Exactly.
That's really cool.
Mm.
And while we're talking about ancient Rome, did you know that even the Christmas tree might have a connection to some of their customs?
Yeah.
Really? Because I always thought that Christmas trees were a more recent tradition,
Right.
mainly associated with Germany.
Well, the Christmas tree, as we know it today, definitely has stronger ties to those ancient Germanic beliefs.
Okay.
But the Romans did actually use evergreen branches as decorations during, the winter solstice.
So the use of evergreens in the winter had a broader significance even before it became central to Christmas celebration.
Exactly.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. For the ancient Germanic people, trees held this really sacred significance.
Okay.
They symbolized life and fertility. And so bringing a tree indoors during, that darkest time of year
Right.
was kind of a way to welcome those qualities into their homes.
It's a really beautiful way to think about it. bringing a bit of nature's resilience and hope into the home
Right.
during winter. And speaking of bringing things into the home, you briefly mentioned aguinaldo
Oh,
in the
yeah.
last part. Can you tell us a little more about that tradition?
Yeah, aguinaldo is a really fascinating tradition
Yeah.
with like a long and varied history. It involves giving gifts or money during, the Christmas season.
Okay.
And it's taken a lot of different forms throughout the years.
I've heard of it, but mostly in the context of like caroling.
Yeah,
Are there like other ways this tradition has been practiced?
absolutely. So from children like singing carols and then receiving treats to like more elaborate gift exchanges among families and communities.
Okay.
The spirit of aguinaldo has really permeated like Christmas celebrations for centuries.
It's interesting how this tradition like highlights the act of giving and sharing
Right.
during the Christmas season,
Right.
which is like a theme that runs through so many different customs.
It really is.
Yeah. And while we're on the topic of like shared traditions, what about Christmas carols? They just seem so quintessentially Christmassy, you know?
Really do.
Do they also have like a history that kind of extends beyond the holiday?
Yeah.
Because I have to admit, I always just assumed that carols were like created specifically for Christmas.
Right.
So what were they before they were Christmas songs?
Well, this might surprise you, but Christmas carols were originally, believe it or not, secular love poems.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's a far cry from like Silent Night.
it really is.
So how did these love poems transform into the carols that we know today?
Well, over time, they gradually evolved into religious songs
Okay.
and just became like increasingly associated with Christmas.
That's so interesting. It's a fascinating example of how cultural expressions can be like adapted and reinterpreted to like fit new contexts.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder if like future generations will look back on some of our like modern Christmas songs and be like, "Oh, wow, that's where that came from." You know.
It's totally possible.
Speaking of things changing over time, what about Christmas cards? Those seem like a relatively modern invention to me.
Oh, you might be surprised to know that the first known Christmas card actually dates back to 1476.
1476. Are you serious? I had no idea that the tradition went back that far.
Wow.
What did those early cards even look like?
Well, the earliest cards were more like hand-colored engravings.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't really until the 19th century with like the advancements in printing technology that
Yeah.
like commercially produced cards became like widespread.
I can only imagine what those early Christmas cards must look like.
Right.
What a treasure to find one today. It's amazing how something that we just take for granted, like sending a Christmas card, can have such like a deep history.
It really is. And while we're on the topic of traditions with like rich histories, have you ever heard of the Christmas lottery in Spain?
I've heard of it, but I don't really know much about it. What makes it so special?
Well, the Spanish Christmas lottery is this tradition that dates back to the early 19th century.
Okay.
It's known for these like really heartwarming stories
Okay.
and the iconic Children of Luck who announce the winning numbers.
Children of Luck. What? Tell me more about that.
So these children, who are often from a school that's like associated with the lottery,
Okay.
they actually sing out the winning numbers
Wow.
in a special draw that's become like this major televised event in Spain.
Oh, wow. I can just picture it now. These like children full of excitement
Right.
announcing these numbers that are going to bring like joy and hopefully fortune
Right. Exactly.
to people all over the country.
It's really cool. It's become this like beloved tradition, and it really embodies like the spirit of hope and, shared good fortune that's so central to Christmas.
Yeah, it's a beautiful reminder that even something as seemingly modern as a lottery can have like these deep cultural roots and a heartwarming backstory.
Absolutely. And it also reinforces this idea that traditions, whether they're, ancient customs or more recent inventions,
Mm.
can play a really powerful role in bringing people together
Right.
and creating a sense of shared identity.
Yeah, for sure. It seems like every tradition that we've like explored today has shown us how like interconnected we are to the past.
Hmm.
You know, how echoes of like ancient beliefs and practices
Yeah.
still resonate in our like modern celebrations.
That's the beauty of exploring history,
Yeah.
It helps us understand not just what things are,
Right.
but like why they are. It just reveals all these layers of meaning
Right.
that we might otherwise just miss.
It's like we're like piecing together this giant puzzle,
Right.
connecting the dots between like different eras and cultures
Mm.
to create this like richer picture of Christmas as we know it.
And that puzzle's constantly evolving, as new traditions emerge and like old ones are kind of reinterpreted to fit the values and beliefs of each generation.
So as we enjoy our modern Christmas celebrations, we're
Mm.
actually participating in this like story
Yeah.
that spans centuries and cultures.
Right.
And we're carrying forward the spirit of those who came before us.
Exactly.
It's a really beautiful thought. But it also makes you wonder, what will future generations add to this story? How will they like shape and reinterpret these traditions?
That's a great question. Just as we've seen how Christmas traditions have evolved over time, adapting to different cultural contexts, different beliefs,
Right.
future generations will undoubtedly leave their own mark
Yeah.
on this holiday.
Maybe they'll create entirely new traditions, or maybe they'll find like fresh meaning in the old ones. Who knows?
We can't wait to find out.
It's exciting to think about all the possibilities.
It really is.
And it just reinforces this idea that traditions aren't static. They're like living expressions of culture, constantly changing and adapting
Yeah,
to reflect like the values and beliefs of each generation.
exactly.
So as we wrap up this Christmas deep dive,
Yeah.
I'm left with this sense of like awe and wonder at the just richness and complexity of this holiday.
And hopefully a renewed appreciation for, the historical threads that connect us to the past
Yeah.
and the just like infinite possibilities for how Christmas will continue to like evolve in the future.
To all our listeners, may your Christmas day be filled with joy, connection, and, a deeper understanding of this fascinating history that is like shaped this beloved holiday.
Absolutely.
We hope this deep dive has like added a little something extra to your
Yeah.
celebrations this year.
We hope you enjoyed it.
Happy holidays. Welcome back.
Yeah.
So I think we've explored the origins of so many traditions,
We have.
from those ancient feasts to like medieval carols.
Yeah.
It's been quite a journey through time.
Yeah, it really highlights how Christmas, as we celebrate it today, is like this tapestry
Yeah.
woven from, all these different threads of cultures and beliefs,
Yeah.
each adding, its own little color and texture.
Before we started this deep dive,
Yeah.
I have to admit, like, I never thought too much about where these traditions came from,
Yeah.
but now I'm seeing them in a whole new light.
That's the power of history, right?
Yeah, it really is.
It helps us understand not just like what things are,
Right.
but why they are,
Yeah.
revealing all these layers of meaning that might have been hidden in plain sight.
Exactly. And it makes you realize that even like seemingly simple acts, like hanging an ornament or singing a carol,
Right.
connects us to this like chain of people and beliefs that stretches back centuries.
It's a powerful reminder that we're part of something like so much bigger than ourselves,
Yeah?
a story that's continuing to unfold with
Yeah.
every generation.
Yeah. So as we gather with, loved ones and share gifts and enjoy those festive meals,
Right.
we're actually participating in this celebration
Yeah.
that like transcends time and place.
We're carrying forward the spirit of all those who came before us.
It's a beautiful thought.
Mhm.
It also makes you wonder, like, what will future generations add to this story?
Yeah.
How will they shape and reinterpret these traditions?
That's a great question to think about.
I-
As we've seen how these Christmas traditions have evolved over time,
right.
adapting to different cultural contexts, different beliefs,
Yeah.
future generations will undoubtedly leave their own mark on this holiday.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe they'll create like entirely new traditions, or maybe they'll find like a fresh meaning in the old ones.
Right.
Who knows?
And it reinforces this idea that traditions aren't like static.
Right.
They're these like living expressions of culture,
Yeah.
constantly changing and adapting to reflect the values and beliefs of each generation.
So as we wrap up this Christmas deep dive,
Yeah.
I'm left with this sense of like awe and wonder at just the richness and complexity of this
Yeah.
holiday.
And hopefully a, renewed appreciation for the historical threads that connect us to the past.
Right.
And the infinite possibilities for how Christmas will continue to evolve in the future.
Well, to all our listeners, may your Christmas day be filled with joy and connection and, a deeper understanding of this fascinating history that has shaped this beloved holiday. We hope this deep dive has added a little something extra to your celebrations this year.
Yeah, we hope you enjoyed listening.
Happy holidays.